it's Jody. Today we're going to talk a little bit about starting your own seeds from scratch. Whether you're doing it as a hobby or you're self-sustaining, you want to grow your own food. The number one step to quality control is growing your own seeds. You control the seeds, you control the medium you're growing in, you control the environment, you control everything that happens in that process. So starting your seeds is actually not a bad idea. Now, if you're new to starting seeds and you've walked into a gardening center, for example, you find yourself in an aisle that is just full of an endless array of products, from your growing mediums to your gadgets, your mats, your domes, your lamps, up to these elaborate growing systems. So how do you make sense of all that? Well, yes, starting seeds can be a little more complicated than you might think. However, if you break it down into a couple of areas, you can kind of fit all of these issues into these little areas. You want to think about your growing medium, and you want to think about your environment. Now, in doing so, just keep in mind the requirements that the seeds have to germinating and sprouting, and you can break it down and kind of come up with something that will work for you. Now, the requirements for seeds are simple. They need warmth, humidity, sunlight, water, and a good growing medium. That's what you need for actually germinating your seeds and turning them into little seedlings. Now, as far as your growing medium is concerned, we're going to talk about that in just a bit. That's not quite as complicated. The environment is what you want to consider when deciding how to go about this. And everyone's environment is different, from areas of the country you live in, from that to just you and your neighbor. You know, the amount of sunlight you get, the number of windows you have, it affects everything differently. So let's consider sunlight. If you have a window or a room with big windows that you can get a lot of sunlight in throughout the day, that's great. If you have a little greenhouse outside, that's another good option. If you have like a long windowsill that you can put all of your things in, that's great as well. Now, if you're in a smaller building, like a little apartment, an inner apartment that's got just a couple of windows, that doesn't mean you're limited to whatever fits in those windowsills. You can certainly do a lot more. Seedlings need just a few hours of sunlight a day. In fact, you don't want to give them a lot more than that because they are delicate and they will burn. So be cautious with too much sunlight. So you have the option, particularly in the situation, if you're in a small house or something, of swapping out those trays throughout the day. As long as you're willing to be flexible, you can actually rotate and do a lot more than you might think. Now, seeds also need warmth, and there are different ways to get that warmth. If you are outside in a greenhouse, you will get that natural warmth because it's enclosed and it will hold the heat in. If you're inside, you have a sunny room that heats up quickly, that's a great option. Typically, I like to keep my ambient temperature at least 76 degrees, if not higher, when I'm doing my seedlings. However, that's not always practical. So another really good option, if you are struggling to keep it warm enough, is you can purchase a heating mat. These heating mats are great. It's a seedling heating mat. You plug it into the wall, you set your trays on top of it. It raises the temperature of the soil in your tray. It keeps that warmer. You also have the option of just simply covering your tray with saran wrap. Or you can purchase a tray with a dome. That will keep in the heat as well. So you've got different options. I'm a firm believer you don't need to spend incredible amounts of money on all these gadgets. You can find ways to create these situations at home as well. So let's move on to humidity, because it kind of goes along with the warmth. The plants, or the seeds and the seedlings, need humidity. Again, if you're out in a little greenhouse, that works very well because you've got it closed in, you water your plants, and you will see the moisture building up on the outside of the walls, and it holds in that humidity and the warmth well. Again, if you're using your trays, simply cover it with plastic wrap or a dome. That's going to not only hold in your heat, it's going to keep your humidity in as well. So the humidity is not as difficult to achieve. If you have a dedicated room in your house that you can close the door, a small room with sunlight, or like a three seasons porch, or even an outdoor porch on a deck that you can close off. You can put a humidifier out there, even a heating element. Keep that warm, keep that moist for those seeds to germinate. So there are those different ways to address that. Now, your water, you want to be careful watering your seedlings. It's easy to drown them, but you need enough water so that they grow. So what you want to do is you want to watch your medium carefully. Kind of as a rule of thumb, if you feel any dampness on the surface as you're touching it, you've got enough water. If you see it pooling, you've got too much. And of course, if it dries out, you want to give it some more. Now when it comes to watering seedlings, I use the squirt bottle. You simply spray, because seedlings are quite delicate. If you take a big heavy watering can and you pour it over your baby seedlings, you're going to squish them, you're going to drown them, you're going to break them, you're going to bend them right over. So a squirt bottle is a great way for the first 2, 3, 4 weeks to go ahead and water your seeds and your seedlings. Okay, now let's talk about the growing medium, that second area. Your growing medium is important because your seeds need to get off to a good start. Now you have options. You can buy a commercial, I don't have one here, you can buy a commercial seed starter. Oh, I do, right here, commercial seed starter. You can get it in various forms. Now when you do that, if you do, you want to make sure you understand your product. You want to make sure you're getting a quality seed starter that's going to give your seeds a good start. You also have the option of buying, for example, pellets. These are the little corrugated, they look like corrugated wood. You simply put water in that, and eventually it sprouts up into like this little pellet, and it's got a hole in the center, and you put your seed in there. These two are good options if you're doing a few seeds, handful of seeds at a time or a season. Commercial seed starter can be quite expensive. And same with the pellets. For example, this small bag of pellets is $3. So you don't get very much for your money. And if you're trying to cut back on costs, that's not a good route to go. Now, also quality, when it comes to the seed starter, quality is an issue. So if you end up with a seed starter that's low quality, you're back to the square one again with quality control. Now, another option, the one that I use, is I create my own seed starter. I put them in these Rubbermaid tubs. You put the lid on, you lock them up, you stack them in the garage, and when it's time to start more seeds, you pull it out and you put it in your container, and you start your seeds. And that is essentially what you're going to get in a good quality seed starter anyways, for a fraction of the cost. And I will post the link down below with the formula on how to make this seed starter for yourself. Now, when it comes to when I first started getting into seeds and dabbling and starting them on my own, I had a problem. I had a lot of problems, actually. I had very little success. The few that I would get to actually germinate and grow would die, and I couldn't figure out why. So over the years, I actually invested in a lot of products, a lot of the gadgets. I've tried growing systems. I've tried everything from the heating mat to the domes. I've tried hydroponic seed starting systems. I've tried, the big elaborate systems that you see that are on the end cap in the big huge boxes. I've tried them all. And what I've kind of narrowed it down to is get back to those basics, your environment and your growing medium. And that's going to be your key. Now, I'm going to show you basically what I do to start seeds. Actually, I'm going to tell you first what I do to start my seeds. What I've come down to over the years is a couple of different things. I will start my seeds indoors on the seed starting mat. I will use my trays, and as you can see, this is an egg carton. I have spent a lot of money over the years on different seed starting trays and systems, and they don't hold up, in my experience. In my experience, I end up replacing them year after year after year anyways. So what I've done is I have gone to using egg cartons, the styrofoam ones, not the cardboard ones. Those will break down and you'll lose, your seeds will go everywhere. The styrofoam eggs cartons and to-go containers. This is I collect to-go containers from friends and relative neighbors. That came from some restaurant with something in it, and those sometimes they come with lids too, so now you've got your dome. But the one thing I will say about that is I do not reuse them year after year, because ultimately, like any other plastics, any other products are going to break down and leach. So I just collect them throughout the year. When it's time to start the seeds, I just fill up my egg cartons and my containers, and off I go. So I'm going to show you. I'm going to remove these, and I'm going to show you just what I do. It's simple. Just as if you were buying a commercial seed starter. You're going to take your bucket once you've made your seed starting, and I always label my containers, and I keep a notebook. This one, for example, is number 6 for the season, a top and a bottom. So I start with my little notebook and I just write down my blue egg carton number 6. And you start at the top, and you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You know what you've got in every cup. You just want it. You want to fill your seed starter in your tray. Use your squirt bottle. Give it a fair amount of water. Give it a few minutes to soak in. Now, all the seeds that you get, you always want to be sure to read the instructions if you're unsure about planting depth, and go with what they're requiring. So let's take, for example, this pepper. We're going to plant a couple of peppers here. 1/4 inch depth. You just simply stack that in, put that into your seed starter, cover it up. Oops, it came out. Give it a little more water, and within 10 minutes it's all going to be soaked in, and you're started. Your seeds are started, just like you would any other seed starting. Now you can see here I've planted some onion seeds right in this container, this plastic bowl. They're the little green onions, so there's plenty of room with the depth for them to grow in there. These are tomatoes and peppers in here. As you can see, they are getting a little bit bigger. They're going to be transplanted out into a holding cup for a couple of months until it's time to get them into the garden. Now, if you do choose to use the pellets, these were started in the pellets, quite a while ago now. And as you can see, pull that out. These are tomatoes. These pellets, they get a little soggy, but you can see the roots are coming out now. It's time to split that and transplant that into holding cups now too for the next couple of months. So seed starting, while it's tricky, break it down. So now what I do, once I've got the seeds planted, is I will set my tray right on the heating mat. Oops. Set my watering can on the heating mat. I will set the tray right on the heating mat, and you can fit multiple trays on here. You plug it in, it heats up, and it will heat the temperature of the soil and keep that warmer. I will, being peppers, I will cover this with plastic wrap. And that works just fine. And within about a week, they're going to be sprouting already. What I do is I have what I call the portable greenhouse that I put outside. And it's the kind that you get at the retailers or the gardening centers. You put the poles together, you put the skeleton together, and you put the plastic over the top. And you just unzip the door, in the morning. You zipper it up at night. After being out on these trays for about a week or so, once they're starting to grow, maybe 2 weeks into it, this then gets moved out into the greenhouse. And that's where it stays for, 2 months or so until it goes into the garden. Now that's a simplified version of starting seeds. Now I realize that it is a little more complicated than that. If you have more specific questions about starting your seeds, please feel free to ask questions. Ask me, ask around, ask your friends. And oh, I forgot to mention these plastic cups. This is another good source. If you want to start, for example, the pumpkin, these seeds get bigger, the roots get longer, quicker. Label your plastic cup. You know, fill it with your dirt, your seed starting mix, just like this. Sprinkle it down. In this case, you're going to want to use the watering can because you've got a lot more in it. You're going to want to soak that. That's going to take roughly 5 minutes or so to soak in. Once that's soaked in, plant your seed. You've got your cup, you've got it labeled, and it can stay in that cup until it's time to put it into the garden if you would like. So there are some options that I use for starting seeds. While I realize it can be a little complicated, don't be intimidated. Let me know if you have questions. Like I said, ask. Leave a note on my Facebook page, Made with Jodi, and I will certainly address those issues, as soon as I can. So again, give it a try and see what you think might work for you. And over time, I think you'll find out that starting your own seeds from scratch has great benefits. I hope you found this a little bit helpful and enjoy your gardening.